So what we then have, if these arguments with respect to mortality and natality go through, is that we have a socio-ontological and normative conception of agency in which birth and death are not just empirical accidents, but are co-constitutive of human agency. That's what we end up with. So you could say what we are generational beings, in N.O. Burns' recent phrase. So the opposite of the present to self, if you wish. That's what you would end up with. And then what I want to ask is, okay, so what does this tell us about intergenerational justice? Suppose that is our conception of what a human being is, then how should we think about what we owe future people? Now, what it has to do is that this kind of theory of justice, it has to be normatively and social-ontologically adequate. So it has to model or grasp the human being ontologically in the right way in its social relations, but it also has to understand the moral relationship to previous and future generations in such a way that it doesn't cut them off, right? It has to take them into account right from the beginning. So what we have is then temporally, the time of birth and death shows that previous generations and future generations are co-given in the present, as it were, and are not just, well, there's just past and future, and so the one is dead and gone, and the other one, well, doesn't exist yet, so we can just, do without that. No, you can't. They are co-present in the present, is the claim. So that means you have to come up with conceptions of moral, social, and political relations among generations that do justice to this co-implication of the past and the future in the present. And so the next step then is to look for these kinds of understandings of intergenerational relations in their moral, political, and social significance that takes that into account. So, and I've basically developed two asymmetrical reciprocity and taking turns, so models that do that I think do that, that is, do justice to this co-implication of past and present past and future in the present. But asymmetrical reciprocity, I'm not going to talk about because of time. So that is the conception of asymmetrical reciprocity. Then I did a nice picture as best as I could. So you can see these are generations, and I have 4 different kinds of reciprocity relations. So one generation, every preceding generation gives birth to, and that means more than just literally giving birth to a generation. It therefore has a relationship to it, has a moral relationship to it, but it discharges it to the next generation. So you get this kind of 3-party relations, sort of interlocking chains, you get pretty thick, you can see pretty thick intergenerational relations if you explore this. Most of the literature on this, by the way, is economic, because it's economists who are interested in reciprocities among generations, intergenerational transfers, and so on. And in 2 chapters that I have on this, one chapter draws on that economic literature. That's quite interesting in that in that context, even though the economic literature always has the drawback that it limits itself to material transfers. So giving birth, as a mother does, doesn't show up. And only very few models would take into account something like care relations, and that is a drawback. But other than that, there's good thinking.